We had the truck for about 6 weeks and had units on about 8 different locations, and the truck stopped working properly. It was flashing all of these lights at me, and then eventually wasn't even running. 4-foot sidewall dump trailer, they heaped it up with tile. The tires were squished down, ready to pop, and I was dumb enough to actually tow it. So don't show this to my insurance company.
What approach did you take when you started? So that people can understand the amount of money you can make in this industry, can you break down like your first year in business to where you are now, and kind of how the business scaled in terms of revenue, and what forms of marketing got you to these points?
Yeah.
Come with me as we take an inside look at a 7-figure dumpster rental business. He's going to show us his day-to-day, what equipment he uses, and what secret marketing techniques he used to scale his business.
So here we are with Abraham from Florida Lead Junk Removal and Dumpster Rentals. Yes. We're going to do a day in the life, kind of shadow him, see how he runs his business, and teach us a little bit about the industry. So Abraham, when did you start your business?
We started Florida Lead Junk Removal in the fall of 2020.
I see you have a lot of dumpsters here. So you transitioned into dumpsters at some point?
Yeah, we did. Basically, we were doing junk removal jobs in the Coeur d'Alene area, and we would have customers asking us, hey, could you just leave your trailer here, and that way I can pick through more stuff that I want to get rid of maybe over the weekend or something? And I would say, no, this is the unit that we use for doing junk removal. And then over about a year's time, I would say we probably had about maybe 50 customers. So I'm kind of a slow learner, but after we were asked 50 times to leave a unit for the customer to load, I decided to kind of rethink the business model. And at that point, we bought a bunch of dump trailers, and we would leave dump trailers for customers to throw their items in. And then at some point, I began investigating on what the most efficient way to do the business would be. And we discovered the hook lift truck and the roll-off dumpsters.
You mind showing us some of your equipment? This is a really nice truck, actually.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, so this is a Isuzu FVR model truck. It's got the Cummins 6.7 motor, diesel motor with plenty of power for hauling, and it's mated with a Allison automatic transmission, so it makes it easy to drive and not have to worry about shifting a bunch. I really wanted a truck here in the Coeur d'Alene area that we could fit in areas to make tight deliveries, because what I noticed is when we were using a lot of dump trailers is we would get onto job sites and be making deliveries in areas that were really technically difficult, and driveways that were on the lake, on the waterfront, or maybe they had like hairpin turns. And so when we were investigating on what truck to get, I came across the Isuzu model. It's a 33,000 GVW truck, which is really heavy duty. It's kind of the biggest single axle truck you can get with a tight turning radius. Kind of one of the advertising pitches that Isuzu says is it's like you're driving a semi truck, but you can turn like a Honda Civic.
So for the average viewer at home that's trying to get into this industry, do you need a CDL to operate one of these vehicles, or an ODOT number?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So depending on what municipality you're running in, you do need a DOT number in order to operate pretty much any hauling business. As far as the CDL goes, that's where it gets a little bit interesting. Again, depending on the state that you're in, you may or you may not. It depends on how you register them. If you register them under the 26,000 GVW in a lot of states, you don't need your CDL. So this is a great option. We have our CDLs, and we kind of always have ever since we were basically 18 years old, back when you could get the CDL when you're 18. But for a lot of guys getting into the business, that can be very cumbersome, and there's more and more regulations around having CDLs. And so this is kind of a great option for guys that don't want to have to get their CDLs. If they get one of these trucks and they set it up from the manufacturer D-rated under the 26,000 pound level, because most of the time, especially for depending on who you're going to be servicing and what kind of work you're going to be doing, you don't need it rated at that heavy. If you need it rated heavier, the 26,000 or above, then yes, you would need your CDL.
With guys that are just starting out, would you really encourage them to go with something this big from the beginning, or stick to a trailer and truck combo? And what are the benefits that you see from starting with something this big? Are there a lot of downsides when it comes to like insurances, and how expensive does that get?
Let me start with the truck and trailer idea. I started with a pickup with dump trailers, and I kind of morphed into a guy with a pickup with a roll-off trailer. And what I can tell you is, having pretty much driven trucks and trailers and larger trucks since my early adulthood, the roll-off trailers, they're a great for if you already have a pickup and really you can only afford the roll-off trailer option. But they're technically pretty difficult and dangerous. This, in my opinion, it's safer to operate, and it's easier to operate. So a lot of guys see this and they think, wow, that's a really big truck. And I don't always like to tell everybody that secret, but it actually makes the job much easier and safer.
Especially in rainy cities like where I'm from.
Yes.
Driving around with a dump trailer was definitely scary. I remember.
Especially in the rain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So people don't think about that.
You hit the brakes and whoops, you've adjusted the trailer brakes up too high, and next thing you know, you have a trailer that's sliding into the next lane.
Yeah.
Or if it's icy, especially like up here in North Idaho. Or there's that issue of you're towing a trailer and maybe it's loaded with 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 pounds of stuff in it, and your trailer brakes aren't working, and now it's difficult to stop.
Exactly. Do you mind showing us your yard? You have a pretty big area here with lots of dumpsters, and
absolutely,
I'm going to go over kind of what sizes you offer. And I see you actually have another truck.
Yes.
We were talking about that earlier.
Yes.
What'd you say about having one truck versus two trucks?
Okay, so yes, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So basically, this was the original truck that we purchased when we decided to go with the hook lift option. And I kind of thought, this is it. I'm getting a new truck. I'm going to get the different dumpsters that go with it. And I thought, well, since I'm buying a new truck, I'll have no problems at all. It'll last me for 10 years and it'll give me time to grow the business and I'll be just fine. Well, one of the lessons that I learned was we had the truck for about 6 weeks. I made about a dozen deliveries with it and had units on about 8 different locations. And the truck stopped working properly. It was flashing all of these lights at me and then eventually wasn't even running. Well, the local Isuzu dealership was very good about it. We brought the truck into the Isuzu dealership, but it took almost 3 weeks to get it figured out what it was. It was a fluke. There was a broken wire in the factory harness of the truck that ended up shorting out and causing a lot of problems where the truck wouldn't run. But in that 3-week time of it getting fixed, my customers were waiting for my service. We ended up getting the second unit, which you had just seen over there, and it ends up being for the better because now we have room for growth. When my nephew's helping me make deliveries, or my son, God willing, in the future will be helping me make deliveries, that way we have a better capacity, if you will. But of course, there's the payment.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, which has kind of helped. It's helped to kind of force us out of our comfort zone of we knew we were going to be able to afford the payment on one truck, but now it's making me really tune into the business to try to make it happen with 2 trucks.
Forces you to grow, essentially, right? Puts you in a tough spot.
But I'm happy that we have the 2. Now that we have the 2, I couldn't imagine not having 2.
Yeah.
One needs an oil change or something like that. In my opinion, it's wiser to have the 2 for just in case, for many different reasons. What if we were to get in a wreck, and the one was down?
So you have a couple different sizes here. What is the most popular size that you offer?
So our most popular sizes that we're currently carrying for contractors are these ones that you see here. These are 22 cubic yard units. They're about 6 foot tall, 16 feet long, 8 feet wide. All of the units that we have large rear opening doors for like easy loading. And I remember back in the day when we just had dump trailers and contractors would want us to deliver units to help out on a project they were doing, they would call us and say, hey, do you guys have any roll-offs? And I said, no, we don't have roll-offs, but we had dump trailers. So I was always trying to sell them a dump trailer.
But there's always that.
Yes, exactly. And it's like you're climbing up into a house to load the unit.
Yeah.
I didn't think much of it because that's what I had and that's what I wanted to sell. But then I realized, kind of like when those customers were asking me, could I leave a unit? I started listening to contractors asking me, couldn't I get a unit they could walk in to load? So once we got these units, my existing customers were much happier. And then what I noticed was we got the units really to cater to the contractors, but now little old Miss Smith, she could load the unit.
Yeah.
Whereas the trailers, it wasn't feasible. That elderly customer, if you will, or those residential customers would have to pay us extra so that we could provide labor, whereas now they have a cost-effective option with the roll-off. So really the roll-off was a big benefit for the contractors and for the homeowners. These are 22 cubic yard units. Like contractors will use these for remodels. A homeowner just called us today. I think you heard on that phone call, they're going to be taking out all the carpet in their house, all the laminate flooring in their house. Something like this would be very useful for that. We also have kind of a mid-size unit, a 17 cubic yard unit. That unit, we don't have any in the yard right now because they're all out on job sites, thankfully, and at homes. But that unit's about a foot shorter, the 17 cubic yard, and it's a foot shorter in height and 2 foot less in length.
Okay.
A lot of people will get the 17 cubic yard unit if they're just like cleaning out their garage or their barn, or they're getting ready to move and there's just a lot of furniture they don't want to take with them.
So with guys just getting started and they can't start with so many sizes, what would you recommend the ideal sizes that you could get away with helping people with residential work or contractors?
If I was only going to have one size, I would say probably the perfect one size unit would probably be a 15 cubic yard unit. Or maybe a 20 cubic yard unit. The 20 cubic yard unit, what's nice about having the extra space is if they don't need it, well, then they don't have to use it. And you could always say something like, I could deliver you a 20, and if you just filled it up 3/4 of the way where you're using 15, it's this much. Maybe make that the deposit, and then if you end up needing the whole thing, you have it there for just in case. That's probably what I would do. So if I was just starting the business and I had to just start with like my budget, maybe I only can afford to get 5 or 10 dumpsters, I would probably get 20 cubic yards. Another benefit of these 22 cubic yards and the 20 cubic yard sizing is the length of them. A lot of guys don't know when they're buying trucks and they're setting up a dumpster business that the length of your dumpster is the angle at which you make the delivery.
Okay.
This 16-foot length is much less of an angle to make a delivery. It's very easy. So as long as you don't have the back of the unit hanging too far over the truck legally wise, if you set that up properly, it's really easy to deliver a 16-foot long unit. You could even go as short as 14-foot long units, but I would highly suggest, depending on how you set your truck up, and you'll want to talk to your upfitter, but you get that figured out. What's the ideal length for the angle of delivery, and the way that we have it set up here, between 14 and 16 feet is the ideal length of the unit that you want.
So I want you to walk us through the process of how you make a sale and how you word it to the customer, what they're allowed to do and what not to do with one of your dumpsters, so that you make sure that you get your point across and that everything goes accordingly.
Yeah, that's really important, Mario, because that's a lot of the anxiety for customers when they call for a dumpster is, number one, they want to know how the process works, and number two, they want to know what would work best and what can and can't go in the dumpster. So we try to make, from the beginning of the process throughout the process, as easy as possible for them with as much information as we can. It doesn't take that long. Usually when they call, I'll say, hey, if you let me ask you a couple of quick questions, I can tell you what size unit would probably work best for your project, how much it'll cost, and then the process for booking it to deliver to your project. And by the way, if you need that unit delivered, I could probably deliver it today or tomorrow. I always put them at ease that we have immediate availability, because that's a big deal to the customer. So first thing I'll ask is, do you have any like hard surface or heavy items like concrete, bricks, rock, dirt, tile? Because if they do, then they're going to want the lowboy unit.
Exactly.
The reason for the lowboy unit is because it's built for that heavy stuff, and plus at the dump, when we dump that stuff separately, they charge us much less than if we were to mix it in with the other general debris. The second question would be, let's just say that they didn't have the hard surface items, so they just have general debris because they're doing a remodel or they're getting ready. They're just looking to clean out their garage or their yard or their barn or something. Then we would direct them to one of our general debris bins that would be available, maybe a 17 cubic yard dumpster or a 22 cubic yard dumpster. It's really whatever sizes you have available for regular debris. And then I would explain through that the only items that can go in it are items that they don't allow us to dump at the dump. Now, depending on where your dumpster company is located, you'll have to check with your whole municipality to see what you can dump and what you can't dump. But generally speaking, you can't dump flammables, hazardous material like paint, oil, gas, and then you don't want to allow anything that'll combust in the unit, like propane tanks, car batteries.
Does the customer sign an agreement stating what they're agreeing to when they rent one of your units? And if so, how do you send that out? Do you collect it on the spot? Does it get emailed?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our CRM, when we send them a quote, it shows the line item of what service we're providing them, and it kind of goes over all those things that I mentioned that they can't put in the unit, and then how much debris disposal cost is included with the service. We try to make it as simple as possible. We try to make it all inclusive to where when they see the number, they know what they're paying. So here's the cost, here's how long you get the unit, here's how much you can put in it, and we try to always cater the number and the cost to exactly what they're going to use it for. The only reason it would cost more is if they needed to keep the unit longer, like additional time, or let's say they were able to play, they're really good at Tetris, and they packed it really tight with just drywall, and it's a couple of £1,000 extra, it would be additional to dump it.
And is there any things you had to learn the hard way when it came to this sort of stuff?
Yes, I have a funny story that cost my back a lot of effort. My first time that I was delivering a dump trailer, using a dump trailer as a dumpster, they said, well, we have some remodel debris that we want to put in the unit, and how much is it going to cost? And I think I told them it was going to be like $300 or $400, and it was a half hour away, and I didn't charge any extra for delivery because I didn't realize how much extra time that was taking me to drive all that way to deliver it and to pick up the unit. Well, when I got there, they had some remodel debris. They had a 7-foot tall pile of tile. They had demoed like 6,000 square feet of tile flooring, and they heaped up our dump trailer. No joke. 4-foot sidewall dump trailer. They heaped it up with tile. The tires were squished down, ready to pop. And I was dumb enough to actually tow it. So don't show this to my insurance company. I was dumb enough to tow it to the dump. It cost me like $850 to dump it.
I was gonna say, yeah, I've done one just like that.
Yeah,
No.
It only took one time to learn.
You gotta get it wrong once to get it right the rest of the times. That's for sure. And I think we're gonna go make a delivery right now, and we can shadow you for the day, see what it's like running an actual dumpster rental business, and we're gonna take the viewers on a trip.
I'm excited. Let's go make a delivery.
This episode is brought to you by JunkRemovalMoney.com. If you need help growing or scaling your dumpster rental or junk removal business, head over to JunkRemovalMoney.com, where we can help you grow and scale with our proven strategies that have helped hundreds of dumpster rentals and junk removal companies across the nation. Back to the scheduled episode.
I decided I wanted to get in a Isuzu. I decided where I wanted to buy the truck and upfit it, but there's a lot of things to think about, you know, when you're ordering your hook lift truck. We're operating here in North Idaho, and in the winters, as you can imagine, it's quite cold. It can get snowy and icy. Well, the first truck that we ordered, this is the second truck, so I had learned after the first truck, but the first truck we ordered didn't even have heated mirrors. So I remember I was out one day making a delivery, and I looked in the mirrors and they were all iced over. And then I looked around for the heated mirror button, but there was no heated mirror. So this truck, this is the second truck. We got it with some additional upgrades, with heated mirrors, with navigation, kind of chrome hubcaps on the wheels, which is nice.
How much is a payment on a truck like this? And how much is insurance for a truck like this?
Let's just say a truck like this costs $200,000 upfitted, which it's pretty close to that cost. They're going to want, 30% down. If you're a newer business, they might even want 50% down. If you're an established business, you might get away with putting 20% down. So on a $200,000 truck that you put 30% down and you're borrowing $130,000 on, at 6% interest, your payment's probably $2,500 a month. At 8% interest, your payment's probably $3,500 a month. So coming up with that $25,000 to $40,000 up front, it's very difficult, but very commonly required. You always want to make sure you wear good boots. There's one lesson I've learned. It's a nail can go through your hokas really easy.
Make sure you have a tetanus shot too.
Work boots are cheap insurance.
I've had 2 nails go all the way through my foot.
Just make sure this stuff off the side is cleaned up so we don't go down the road looking too fugly. We'll make sure we tarp it. And then right here at the front, I like to make sure nothing's going to tear my tarp straight away. So I'll take this stuff and kind of press it down a little bit. It's worth taking 5 minutes, rather than shredding your tarp. Okay, it's looking pretty good. One really important thing for a hook lift truck is your tarp system. Everybody's got a newfangled idea for a tarp system. The one that we went with has a remote. It's pretty handy. It also has a backup physical switchboard up here that I can run the tarp system on. Here's the backup physical one on board. It works really well. And here's the remote. The nice thing about the remote is I can kind of walk around while I'm covering it, making sure nothing's going to poke through the tarp. I always take a walk around the unit to make sure that everything looks good for going down the road, to make sure I'm not leaving a bunch of junk behind me. It's just cheap insurance, and it's common courtesy to the other vehicles, you know? Like if there was a rock or something stuck on one of these wheels, just wipe it off. Okay, it's looking good. I think we're ready to go.
And we're just about to scale in. They weigh us before and after to see how much weight that we're dumping and to charge accordingly.
What are your rates here? How do they charge you?
The rates here at Coeur d'Alene, they vary from depending if we separate the wood versus a mixed demolition with concrete and heavy stuff, anywhere from $55 a ton to $135 a ton.
How long is the process for you to get in and out of this transfer station, typically?
This is a really nicely managed and ran transfer station. I average about between 10 and 15 minutes from the point that I scale in to the point that I scale out. On busy days, it's about double that, 20 to 30 minutes. So here we are. We're just pulling up onto the scale, and I'll tell them what I have in the back of the truck. And on this load, I have asphalt roofing shingles.
And how important is it to be nice to these guys?
It's very important to be friends with the guys at the transfer station. How you doing, brother?
Not bad, how are you?
Hey, doing good. I've got a film crew with me today. This is Mario.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you.
This is a load of asphalt roofing shingles.
Perfect.
Thanks, man. We appreciate it. You too. Yeah, generally speaking, it's good to get to know their names, you know, and to make friends with the guys at the transfer station. I love them because they make my life easier. The more organized and clean and safe that a transfer station is run, the easier, the cleaner, and the safer it is for me to operate my business. So I do make sure to tell them thank you, and I even gave a handful of them my hat. So
That's good. That's good branding.
yeah, absolutely. A lot of the times, I remember when I first gave them a Fluidity junk removal hat, some of my competition got really mad. And I told the transfer station employees, I said, tell them not to get mad. Tell them just to give them one of your hats and rotate hats. And so a couple of the other guys in town have done that. We have a good time always keeping the transfer station employees with fresh hats. What we'll do is when we pull up, when we're next in line to pull in to dump, I'll get out and I'll untarp my load. And that way, nobody's waiting on me. When we back in, I'll simply get out, I'll open the door, and we'll be ready to dump the truck.
Do you have any horror stories at the dump?
Yes. So back in the day, before we got the hook lift truck and the dumpsters, when we were running dump trailers, the dump trailers have a latch system where you hook like a loop on the doors of the dump trailer to keep them open for dumping. And dump trailers are kind of notorious for, when they're dumping, kind of jerking around. And if they jerk around a lot, like if you go to dump a dump trailer and shimmy in like that, those hooks can flap up, and the dump trailer doors flap shut. And when they're up in the air and you're dumping, you can imagine what happens. I've ripped off, I think, about 3 dump trailer doors doing that.
Oh, wow.
So you see this guy with a dump trailer that's dumping it. If he goes to pull forward and he jerks forward too fast, they'll come unhooked. So what we ended up doing with our dump trailers is every dump trailer we had, because we were up to, I think, over 20 dump trailers, but every dump trailer that we had, we actually custom welded like a heavy duty chain on the trailer sidewall and on the door, and then we used very heavy duty like carabiners that were this big those snap carabiners for like rock climbers, and we would carabine a positive carabiner. We would snap them together, and that way we never had that problem again. But that was something we had to retrofit all the trailers to do.
My story's a little bit worse.
Is it?
One of the guys was, he left his door open to his truck.
Oh no.
Okay.
Oh,
and when
no.
I pulled forward with my dump trailer, my fender grabbed his door and bent it the opposite direction. And the guy couldn't shut his door.
That's a good one.
All right, so here we go. I'm gonna untarp it now, and basically we've got a control panel here that controls the tarp. It opens the tarp or extends the tarp and raises and lowers the tarp. We're just opening the tarp now and retracting it, and I'll kind of watch it here and put it back to where it sets down nicely, and then I'll go get the door ready to open. So right here, there's a safety chain on our dumpster doors. I'll unchain it, and then this is a ratchet binder. I'll just start to loosen the ratchet binder. I won't do it too much, but now it's really ready so that when we back in there, we can kind of do it as quick as possible so that we're not making the other people wait too long. So we'll hop back in the truck now and get ready to back into dump.
Earlier in the video, you were talking about the importance of spending money to make money, right? Spending money on good equipment.
Yes.
The trend that I've seen in the past, though, lately is people jump into this business and spend $100,000, $200,000 in equipment, and they have no marketing, so it's really hard for them to start out. I wanted to get your opinion on that. Like, I know you're all for spending money to make money, but what approach did you take when you started?
Yeah, it's important, Mario, that people take that into account and they think about, not putting the cart before the horse, if you will. I mean, really, the reason that I originally started the business was to do just junk removal, and one of the reasons that business made sense to get into because it was kind of cheap to start, if you will. I already had a pickup, and so all I needed to do was to buy a dump trailer. So junk removal business to start with, all I needed to purchase was one dump trailer. It cost me about $13,000, and I was in business doing junk removal using my back. Growing the junk removal business over a couple of year time period, we would be getting those customers asking us, hey, can you leave us the trailer so that we can load it, and then you can pick it up maybe next week sometime. We had so many customers ask for that service over about a 1 year span that I realized, hey, we need to seriously consider providing this service for our customers. That's when I came up with the idea of, well, I'll just buy another trailer and we'll use that trailer to leave customers to load. So it was really an investment of about $12,000 per trailer at a time. And then we would have to pay for registration, so on and so forth. When we got to the point where we had, I think it was about 20 dump trailers, I began thinking, well, maybe there's a more efficient way to do this.
Yeah.
I think that's really when I started watching more of your content and talking about, dumpster business and a few other, YouTubing a lot of dumpster business ideas and seeing what guys were doing. And so, to your point of making that investment and managing debt, my philosophy from the beginning was I would buy dump trailers as I earned the cash to buy them, so I didn't have debt. And then when we were considering, start getting the hook lift truck and starting the dumpster company, we really had to weigh that. How much was the truck going to cost? How much cash flow did we need doing the service in order to make the payments? And so it's a really big deal to get your marketing right first. You want a successful business model first. You want the phone calls first. You want the contractors, the homeowners first.
So that people can understand the amount of money you can make in this industry, can you break down like your first year in business to where you are now and kind of how the business scaled in terms of revenue and what forms of marketing got you to these points?
Yeah, that is important to consider. When we started off in junk removal, it was really just, door to door in my neighborhood, business to business, knocking on doors, door tagging, kind of guerrilla marketing, yard signs, things like that. And then I realized, hey, wow, there was a quick fix in marketing called Google Ads. And if I spent a couple of $1,000s in a month on Google Ads, I get a bunch of phone calls. And that worked to an extent, temporarily to get a lot of phone calls for the season. But basically, from starting a junk removal company to turning into really a dumpster company, my story was was when we really wanted to take the junk removal company serious, we went with a marketing outfit out of Seattle. They had a great sales team, and they talked about how they could build us a website and how we could do Google ads, and how this process was going to be maybe a 2 or 3 year process, a really long time to see extended positive results.
Yeah.
Looking back, I think that that's silly now, because you did it a whole lot faster than that.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies will give you like the scariest scenario possible to keep you like on the hook per se. But a lot of it has to come down to the size of your market, right? And how many competitors you have. Obviously, if you're in a metropolitan area with like LA, where there's 20 million people and there's 2,000 junk removal companies, it could take 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
But in a population like yours, where you don't have that many people, there's no way you could expect a 2 to 3 year time frame for that. So I was surprised to hear that too. What marketing are you doing now? Because you talked about Google Ads, but where are you at now with the marketing?
So we're in year 5 of business. After 3 years of junk removal, we really started focusing on our dumpster rental, and it was at that point where you started helping us. And really, the real eye-opening chapter in our business's life is when you started helping us with our website, but specifically with the SEO, and return on investment with the services that you've been providing us has been kind of through the roof amazing for the couple of main reasons. We quit running Google ads, which we were spending a lot of money doing junk removal on Google ads.
How much do you think you were spending per year?
I would say year 2 on Google ads, we were probably spending about $15,000 in year 2. And then year 3, I would say closer to $40,000.
Wow, that is a big investment for this market. Yeah.
Yes,
That's
it's a small market.
Yeah.
The city that we're in, there's only like about 150,000 people in the metro area. And so at that time, the marketing company that was helping us was really focusing on why that was important to keep doing that. Well, the more I started investigating on digital marketing and SEO specifically with the website, the more I started to learn about how that worked, the more I started seeing your videos pop up in my feed on YouTube. And I think one of the most important things that business owners need to know, especially doing junk removal and dumpsters, is they own their website when you make it. It's an asset. It's something that they get to keep in the future. It's not like a Google ad where if you quit paying them a couple $1,000s a month, they quit showing you at the top of the list, if you will, right? And then even more importantly, how you've explained on how Google or how search engines, how they categorize your website to see if you're popping up for what customers are actually looking for. I think that's really important. And when I learned how that worked from you, I saw the real value in it.
So you're in year 5 and you've started seeing a lot of growth because you stopped focusing so much on the ads and started focusing more on SEO and all the little tricks that we've taught you along the way on how to like really start taking over a territory. To finish off with this interview, I kind of just want to let you have the floor for a second and give any piece of advice you would to any person that's either starting a junk removal business and wants to transition into dumpster rentals, or they're just looking at starting one of these businesses. What's some piece of advice you would give them in order to get started off the right way?
Yeah, I'd love to. 2 things I would say is in junk removal, I would say it's a much more dangerous job than most people think. And so don't undercut yourself. Find the work first before you buy the equipment. So let's say you have a pickup, just use your pickup, and if you have a flatbed trailer already, just use the equipment that you already have. And don't be the guy that's trying to do it for the cheapest. See if you can provide a great service with great customer service for your customers, and then charge accordingly. You want to be in business to make a profit so that you can stay in business and continue to provide the business. My suggestion would be, if you're a junk removal guy and you want to get into dumpsters, I would seriously consider deciding if you want to be an owner-operator in the dumpster business. I am, and that helps me. It gives me a big edge. Also, if you're going to be an owner-operator, you have to want to drive a truck around and deliver dumpsters to customers, and you have to want to talk and interact with customers. So I like doing that. I like communicating with the customers, whether it's a contractor or a homeowner, and I love driving around. So if you love driving, if you love talking with people, it might be a business that you might love doing.
If you enjoyed this episode and like this type of content, consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. And if you need help growing or starting a dumpster rental business, go ahead and visit junkremovalmoney.com or call the number here on the screen, 503-914-7250. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.